Okay, so if you're watching part 3 of the video, you'll notice that the last part of the video is from Monday because I forgot to click start broadcast in the last hour of class. Just super awesome. So I finally fixed my SSL error. So you notice Firefox, it's saying, yeah, okay, you've added an exception, so it won't mark this as red, but it's not really a trusted certificate. I'm okay with that. I had to go into some of my back end. So I'm going to log off. So what we want to do now is we want to enable Google authentication. So you notice when we click login, we get this section on the right that says use another service to log in. And there's explanations here of how to do this. So if we go into our code, there's a file in the app start called startup.auth. Let's open that one up. So this uses OWIN and ASP.NET Identity for managing cookies. This is where we can change some of the default settings if we like. So for example, if we want to change what page, what path we redirect a user to, if they try and access something they're not allowed to, right now it goes to account login. You can change that path if you want. It also automatically creates a cookie that gets checked every 30 minutes. So let's say we want to change this. In fact, I had to change this in an application I was building recently because the application is for an office where it's just supposed to display, the client has a big 60-inch monitor on the wall in their office and they want to display data all day long. They just want the screens to rotate and show an updated list. Well, they don't want to have to log in every 30 minutes to prevent that from timing out. So rather than from minutes, I used from hours and it's 10 hours. So they come into work in the morning, log in, they can load the display, they'll stay logged in all day long, basically until the next day. Same, that's how many minutes if we enable two-factor authentication. The default is you've got 5 minutes to confirm your registration. If you want to extend that, shorten it, you can. And then we have this handy block of code starting on line 48. Uncomment to enable logging in with third-party providers. Cool. Now, there are additional third-party providers we could add if we wanted to, but Microsoft's actually given us the code for these 4. So let's start with Google. So let's uncomment lines 61 to 65. Take out the comment, code will turn black and blue. So just uncomment those 4 lines. It will be the exact same line number in your file as in mine because this is just boilerplate code from Microsoft. Compile. And let's try the login page again. We're not done yet. We're just kind of starting out. So I'll refresh my login. Okay. So that code is active, but it's complaining because you can't enable Google authentication without a client ID and a client secret, right? We've got empty strings, which it won't accept. So we'll set these up in a minute. For now, let's just hard code something. These are valid keys. Let's just put something in here. That'll make that error go away, telling us there is no client ID and there is no client secret. So let's build again. And now if you refresh your login screen, the page should load. And what do you see when the page loads? So once we stick in a value here, it automatically enables a Google button, which you can change if you want. So when we click, it gives us this little tooltip, log in using your Google account. That's good. Now, it's calling Google's API, but passing in the client ID will go here and is also secretly passing in our client secret. Well, that's no good, right? Because we need valid API keys in Google. So what we need to do now is go to the Google Developer Console. We need to create a project. We need to generate a valid client ID and secret, and then we need to enable the dreaded Google Plus API. So we can call any one of we can use those keys to then call any Google API we want. We want to call reCAPTCHA, we want a Google Map, we want one of many, we want Google Charts. There's tons of APIs in there, but we'll deal with Google Plus for now. So your link is here on Blackboard. Grab this link to the Google Developer Console /project create. So just copy that link and open this up in a browser where you are logged into Google. So I'll use Chrome for this. I don't like to stay logged in my main browser to Google. It's too invasive. I only log into it when I use it when I need it. So that'll take you here. Create a new project in the Google Developer Console. Create a name. You can just call it MBC Music Store. You don't need an organization. Just click the Create button. Then it'll say select or create. I can just pick select. And now I can pick my music store project I've just created. You can see some of my past ones, some of my client sites where we're using Google API. So each different application created as a separate project in the Google Developer Console, because each one gets its own set of keys. So I'll pick my music store. So there's no APIs enabled right now. So I'm going to scroll down to the Getting Started section, and I want to enable APIs and get credentials. Click that link here. So right where my cursor is highlighted, you can see it in green under the Get Started. So we need to do two things. It doesn't really matter which order we do them in. We need to set up API keys, and then we need to enable the Google Plus API. So I'll click Enable APIs. So there's 214 different Google APIs that we can access. So we'll click on Enable, and we'll search Google Plus. So I'll just click on it. So we want to enable this API in our project. Click the blue Enable button. So it turns it on. And then it prompts us, well, you can't call the API until you have generated a set of API keys, an ID and secret. So create your credentials. So what do we want? We want Google Plus API. We are calling it from a web server. And we just want user data. And for some reason, we still have to click this "What credentials do I need" button, which is really weird. We've already told them what credentials we need. We click that button. Then it jumps us here. So we're creating an OAuth client ID. It gives a default name of Web Client 1. You can just leave that. And then it wants to know what are the allowed redirect URIs. So here we want to put in both our local server as well as our Azure site so that we can use this API either locally or when we publish to the server. So for starters, I'll just go back to my main site. I'm not sure where it went. Oh, I finally got my SSL to work. I'm going to copy my home page, paste it in, and then on the end of it, I'm going to add sign in -Google. This is what ASP.NET Identity expects. That's the URL that it will come back to after somebody authenticates with Google. And then I'll want the exact same URL, but with my Azure domain. So I also want it under HTTPS. But for now, I'll just call it Music Store. Again, /sign-Google. So I want both of these to be allowed, locally and my Azure site. Each one ends in sign-in-Google. And then it jumps me over here to set up the consent screen. So this is the little window that will pop up to users saying, do you authorize Google to access your profile for this application? So that's like a permission screen for our users. We have to give it a name. You may as well call it PC Music Store. You could put in the URL, you don't have to. We could also put in a logo, which I think we can upload later on. We'll do that later. When you officially deploy, it also wants a link to a privacy policy. We don't need that for now. And then I'll click continue. So there's our client ID. We'll also need the secret. I'll just say I'll download this later. We can always get this later. So now I've got an OAuth with a client ID. If I click edit, we should be able to also access the secret. Then we can copy and paste those values from the Google portal into our code. So I'll click edit here, or I can just click on the name. So here's the client ID, and the client secret is right below. So I'll copy those values into my application code. Now, we don't really want credentials hard-coded into our DLL. This isn't the best place to put them. We'll put them here for now and try and get it to work, and then we need to store it in a better place. So put your ID there and your secret. The ID is sent as part of the client-side request, so it shows up in the URL. The secret is passed to the server invisibly. Okay? And both have to match. Correct. Google Plus, not Google, not domains. So I'm going to put those credentials in. I'm going to compile my site. And now I'm going to try to log in with Google. I'll try it in two browsers. In Firefox, I'm not currently logged in with Google. In Chrome, I am. So in Firefox, I should get a pop-up asking me to log in with the Google account. So here's where it has the name of our app. If we had uploaded a logo, it would show here. And it's saying that This application will get my name, my email, and a profile photo from Google if I have one. So I pick a Google account. If it authenticates me correctly, it's going to come back to that sign-in-Google, which is kind of a hidden page that ASP.NET Identity already built for us. So Google's checking my account. Good, really good question. We'll talk about that. No. We'll look, right? So I'm logged in with my Google account now. If I do this in Chrome, just grab my link. So in Firefox, I actually got the login box and I had to enter the credential. I'll come back to your question in just a second because it's a good one. And I'm glad you brought it up. So in Chrome, I'm already signed into my Google account. Right, here I am, knows it's me. So now if I click login with Google, it should just send me right through. I shouldn't have to provide a password because I'm already signed in, just asking which Google account. So now I'm logged in. So that's an interesting question. What happens in the database, right? Google doesn't send us the password. So let's look at our users table and see what's here. So here's my Google account. The password is null, right? We don't know the password. All we have is the username. So with this account, I can't use our login form. I can only use Google, right? We're basically letting Google, we're outsourcing the authentication of the users to Google. As long as they have a Google account, they can get into our site, is what we're allowing, right? So we may not want this. We may not want to allow anybody with a Google account to come to our site.
Second question is, if automatically makes them customer, can we make them an admin like through that?
It actually only authenticates. There's no authorization.
Okay.
So right now, this person is not in any role. Okay, so it's not tied to user roles. So if you want to do that, that part you've got to do manually in that case. So it does store them in ASP.NET users, so you can easily see which of these accounts were created through a social provider, right? The ones with no passwords, because those passwords are stored somewhere else. Okay, that answer your question?
Question for you. So let's just say we wanted to let them sign in through Google. We wanted them to be a customer so that they could actually start buying stuff. That can be possible?
It's possible, but you're going to have to override it. So okay. Let's kind of look at what happens, because normally, so here's our account controller. We haven't really looked at this, right? So this is what Microsoft gives us. Let's look at the register method maybe. So register, yeah, this is just handling a local registration. So username and password entered on our form. But let's see if we go to external login callback. This would be the method that gets called when it comes back from authenticating through OAuth. So here, they're successful. So this redirects them. So in this case, Charlie, this would be where you would need to write your custom code to grab that identity that we got back and then assign them to a particular role. You'd have to do this manually. This is where, and in fact, this doesn't even tell us though whether it's a new login or an existing one, right? So we would need to check, do we already have this user, and is this user already in a role? And if they're not, I want to put this user in this kind of role. So you would have to write that logic in yourself. But, I would suggest we don't necessarily need to here, right? Just because they've signed in with Google. Well, I mean, I guess we could. True. Yeah, I get that's true. So we could. The other thing we could do, other time we could do it is when they actually check out. Could be I'm going to create an account today. I start shopping, but until I actually buy something, maybe it doesn't matter if I'm a customer yet. In that case, we would add it when we do the checkout, which we're going to build in a few weeks, right? So either one really. So yeah, so that becomes a question of what's the business rules, right? What does my business need? What kind of roles and when should users go in those roles? So then you take what they've given us and you would customize it as you see fit. Right? I think this is where it would go. I'm just going to check. Right. Okay. Actually, sorry. Here. This is when they've already logged in. So my apology. This is if they're new. Oh no. So then we prompt them. We don't need. So that only happens sometimes. Sorry. So yes, I think it is here. That's where we would write our custom code. What do we do when we get a user who's signed up through a third-party auth tool? Do it here. Now I didn't have a chance to cover this in the other sections. We can pretty easily add Facebook and Microsoft login. They're almost identical. We want to do Microsoft login. We go to the developer portal, sign in with any Microsoft account. So what do we want to do? Yeah, let's add an app. Give it a name. Now, Microsoft's a little bit different. It's similar. There's the ID. They call it the application ID. The secret you can only see once. If you don't copy it then, you have to generate a new one. Whereas Google lets you see it. So I'll come back here in a second. Oh, there's one other thing we'll need to do with Google. I forgot about this, but we'll carry on. We'll do Microsoft. So let's uncomment the Microsoft lines 48 to 51. Your client ID, whoops, I guess, sorry, 49 to 51. Your client ID is right here, the application ID. Grab that. For the secret, let's generate a new password. It's going to show it to us once and only once. Just copy it out of there. If we build now and click login, we're going to get both the Google and Microsoft button in an application. get Microsoft to work, and then we better move these keys out of here to a configuration file. I forgot to do that. Okay. Add a platform. So click that. Web. Simple enough. And enter our redirect URLs. I'll just copy my domain. And this time it's sign in Microsoft. One thing Microsoft does that Google doesn't believe. Google should do this, but they don't. Microsoft requires you to have an SSL certificate to use any of their APIs. Say, your traffic's not encrypted. We don't want you calling our API and sending plain text traffic. Okay. I put the S in, error goes away. And we could even put a little picture in here. There's actually a logo. We actually have a Music Store logo. It was in the file we downloaded. Inside of our Music Store assets, there's actually a little logo here. I can pick it if I want. Or not. And we'll save. Okay, changes were saved. Cool. So now I should be able to log in with a Microsoft account. So now I've got a Microsoft option here. Click it. Pick an account. It asks about my permissions, shows the name of the application. Now, for some reason, the Microsoft login does this. Rather than send me right through the way Google does, it just asks me to confirm this. Brings me back here. Oh, that's why, because I've already used that Microsoft account. So that's not going to work. So I better use. Okay. I may have already used this. Okay, so now I'm logged in with a Hotmail account. So the process is pretty much the same for any of the portals. You want to enable Twitter, you want to enable Facebook. They're all pretty similar. Create the application, generate your keys, and put in the proper redirect URI. So for Facebook, it's sign in -Facebook. For Twitter, it's sign in -Twitter. And there are other packages. So these ones are already built into our Visual Studio project. If we look at our references, we have O in for Google, Microsoft, and Twitter. I'm not sure why there's no package here for Facebook. So there are additional packages for other libraries. You want log in with LinkedIn, you can just add the NuGet LinkedIn package and call it. So the only other thing we should do here is we should move these keys out of our code. They shouldn't live here. We want to store kind of application level variables. Where would be the best place to put them? Yeah, in our web.config, probably the best place. So we should move these to web.config and then read them out of there. So I'll go to my web.config. And in here, we have this section starting on line 15 called app settings. This is where we can define global variables. Just give it a name and a value. So I'll create Google Client ID and Google Client Secret. And maybe I'll do the same with Microsoft, and I'll just cut and paste the values out of my auth file. Maybe I'll put my Microsoft keys first since they're first in the code file. So we're creating 4 application level variables. And we can just cut and paste the values. Here's my Microsoft. Worked well. Good job. Just move all 4 of those values. Make sure you put the right value in the right variable. Now, there is a way, we don't have to put this stuff in web.config. If we're on Azure, there's actually a setting where you can create and set the values for these in the Azure portal instead. Microsoft stores, encrypts them and stores them on the server. That's probably more secure. But that's an extra level. You can poke around and find that in the Azure portal. There's an application settings where you can just create a key and put in a value, and it will use those. So there's our 4 keys and values. And now we need to just modify the code in our startup to read these values from web.config instead. So I'll just use this class called the configuration manager. It will read from this app settings section. I'll get this red line under here, just missing a reference. So if I mouse over, I can just accept the little code hint, add a reference to system.configuration, I click it. The red lines are gone. So when you first write this code, it'll be red. Just mouse over and use Visual Studio's tooltip. Or you can just go up to the top of your file and add using system.configuration. Either one will work. So now we want the same thing for Google. The Google Client ID and the Google Client Secret. And we'll build, and we should just check to make sure we didn't break it by moving the values out of our code. These key names are case sensitive. So it's got to match the key names exactly in your web.config to work. So if you've moved them, just check and make sure you can still log in with both your Google and your Microsoft account. I'm going to check both of them here. I'll log in with Google. Which is working. And I can log in with Microsoft. And I'm logged in with my Hotmail account. So we're enabling the code, generating the keys in the developer portal, plunking them in web.config, and using the configuration manager to read those global variables. So the app settings is helpful for any kind of global variables. Maybe we want something like a global path, or we want to use a global mail server so we can send mail from different parts of our application. We can put all those settings into app settings. Does anybody have questions before we end for today? Basically, what we've done today is the first part of assignment 2. Take assignment 1, make it so that only an authenticated user can change the data, enable and force all requests to use SSL, and enable some OAuth logins. So create a new Google app, create a new Microsoft app, and you're going to have to create using one other service of your own choosing. Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub, Facebook, I don't care. Pick another OAuth provider, create a set of keys and an app there, and let us log in with that provider as well. That's the first part of assignment 2. Pardon? You could? You could, but don't push anything to GitHub. If you want to start, yeah, you could start. But my suggestion is prepare for the exam first, right? And then on reading week, yeah. Pardon? Yes. So you could, but don't upload changes to assignment 1 yet. Or make a copy of it. Start working on it. The problem is if you've deployed to Azure, I can't see that people haven't changed other things. If you had stuff that wasn't working as of yesterday, if you start committing, I'm not going to know what those changes were. So please don't, if you start working on this, don't push anything to GitHub until you have your mark. Yes, I guess you could push to a different branch, but I would prefer you just don't push to GitHub until I mark your assignment. Okay.